A black woman in dress blues stands at the entrance of a private dining room and holds out an engraved invitation. The maitre looks at the card. Then he looks at her. Then he looks past her, as though searching for the person the invitation actually belongs to. "I'm sorry. This event is by referral only." She says her name. Sergeant First Class Adaeze Nwosu, retired. She says she was personally invited by the groom's father. The matron smiles the kind of smile that has never once been warm. "I'll need to verify that." He does not verify it. He steps aside and waves through the couple behind her. White, mid-40s, the woman in a cocktail dress, without asking for anything at all. Adaeze stands in the doorway of the Whitmore Club for 11 seconds. Then she turns and walks back to her car. She does not make a scene. She was trained not to make scenes in places where making a scene would cost her more than it cost anyone else. That was the last mistake the Whitmore Club ever made. Because what happens next? To the maitre d', to the family that owns this place, to the 40-year-old federal contract that has kept its doors open, not one person inside that room sees coming. If you believe the receipt always outlasts the insult, stay with me. My name is Reid, and I uncover things people spend money to keep buried. This one's from Charlottesville, Virginia. And you need to understand who Adaeze Nwosu is before you understand what she cost them. Adaeze Nwosu is 31 years old. She spent 9 years in the United States Army, 6 of them in the 75th Ranger Regiment. She deployed 3 times. She came home with a commendation medal, a shoulder that aches when the weather changes, and a clarity about human character that most people spend a lifetime avoiding. She grew up in Richmond, Virginia. Her mother, Chinyere, came from Enugu State in Nigeria and worked as a licensed practical nurse for 22 years. Her father left when Adaeze was 4, which is the kind of absence that either breaks you or teaches you to build load-bearing walls inside yourself. Adaeze built walls. Then she joined the army and learned to knock walls down. She was the kind of soldier who remembers names. Not just her unit, everyone. The supply sergeant, the youngest private, the interpreter, who worked with them in Kandahar and went home to nothing after the withdrawal. She remembers all of them. She keeps a notebook with names in it, the way other people keep photographs. After she separated from the Army in 2022, she went back to school on the GI Bill. University of Virginia, master's degree in public policy. She finished in 18 months. She does not waste time. The invitation came from Harold Ostroff, 67 years old, founder of Ostroff Logistics Solutions, a firm that holds federal contracts totaling $340 million across 11 states. Harold had spoken at a Veterans Employment Symposium at UVA the previous spring. Adaeze had asked him 3 questions during the Q&A. Sharp questions, the kind that assume the speaker is capable of a real answer. And afterward he had handed her his card and said he wanted her at his son's rehearsal dinner. His son, Bennett Ostroff, was marrying a woman named Claire Hathaway. The Hathaway family has been in Charlottesville for 4 generations. They own property. They sit on boards. They have the kind of name that opens doors so smoothly you don't notice the door moving. The rehearsal dinner was at the Whitmore Club, a private establishment on the west side of the city, founded in 1962, membership by invitation only. The building is Georgian Revival, red brick, white columns, a brass fixture over the front entrance that throws a circle of amber light on the steps every evening at dusk. Adaeze wore dress blues. Not because it was a military event, it wasn't. She wore them because Harold had told her, with a veteran's directness, that she had earned the right to walk into any room she chose in that uniform, and she believed him. She arrived at 6:47 p.m. She held the invitation Harold had mailed her, cream cardstock, embossed lettering. She was stopped before she reached the host stand. The maitre d's name was Carter Pell. He had worked the front of the Whitmore Club for 11 years. He was good at his job in the specific way that gatekeeping jobs reward. He could read a room and sort people into the right categories with a single glance. He looked at Adaeze and made a decision in about 2 seconds. He asked for her name. She gave it. He asked who had invited her. She told him. He said he would need to verify. He did not move. Then the couple behind her arrived, Martin and Susan Aldridge, members of long standing, and Carter stepped back, smiled, gestured them through with both hands open. Adaeze counted 11 seconds. Then she left. She drove 3 blocks, parked on a side street, and called Harold Ostroff. He answered on the second ring. "I'm outside," she said. "Carter Pell told me the event was by referral only and asked to verify my invitation. Then he let the couple behind me in without a word." Harold was quiet for 4 seconds. She could hear background noise. A ballroom, laughter, glassware. "Don't move," he said. "I'm coming out." Harold appeared at the top of the club steps 90 seconds later. He was in a dark suit. His face, when he saw Adaeze standing beside her car, still in her dress blues, did something complicated that settled into something quiet and hard. He walked back inside. He spoke to Carter Pell for approximately 45 seconds. He then returned to the door and waved Adaeze in himself. Carter Pell smiled at her as she passed. A different smile this time, the one that apologizes without apologizing. Adaeze smiled back. She had been in rooms with men who wanted to kill her and had managed to look pleasant the whole time. A maitre d' in a blazer was not a challenge. She found Harold at the bar. She thanked him for coming out. He shook his head once, the way people do when they don't want, thanks for something that should not have required effort. Then he introduced her to his son. Bennett Ostroff was 34 and had his father's directness and his mother's laugh. He greeted Adaeze with the easy warmth of someone who had grown up around people. Harold admired. Claire Hathaway, the bride, was gracious in the way of someone who has been raised for exactly this kind of event. The room reading, the smile managing, the introduction sequencing. She was not unkind. She was also not watching very carefully. Claire's mother, Rosalind Hathaway, was watching. Rosalind was 58 years old, silver-haired, straight-backed, wearing pearls that her mother had worn before her. She chaired the Whitmore Club's membership committee. She had been on that committee for 9 years, and in those 9 years she had overseen the approval of 206 new members. The club currently had 4 black members. All 4 had joined before Rosalind took the chair. Rosalind watched Adaeze cross the room. She watched Harold greet her. She watched Adaeze set her glass on the bar with the controlled economy of movement that military service either builds in you or doesn't. Then she walked over. "I understand there was a little confusion at the door," Rosalind said. "Carter can be overly cautious. I do hope you weren't made to feel unwelcome." "I'm here," Adaeze said. "Thank you." Rosalind paused at the brevity of the answer. Then she smiled and moved on. Later, during dinner, a Whitmore Club board member named Douglas Crane sat 2 seats from Adaeze. He asked what she did. She told him, Army, UVA, public policy. He nodded with the particular nod of a person rearranging their expectations. Then he asked who she knew at the club. She said she was a guest of Harold Ostroff. Douglas looked across the table at Harold. Something passed between them, a flicker of reassessment. Not about Adaeze, but about Harold. Nothing more was said. The dinner ended at 10. Adaeze drove home to her apartment on the east side of Charlottesville. She made tea. She sat at her kitchen table. She opened the notebook with names in it and wrote Carter Pell at the top of a blank page. She had not decided yet what to do with the evening, but she had been trained in a discipline that distinguishes between an incident and a pattern, and something in her was already pulling on that thread. 3 days later, a friend sent her a link. The Charlottesville Courier had run a short article about the Whitmore Club's upcoming application cycle. The article mentioned the club's 98-year history, its annual charity gala, the $2.3 million federal Arts and Heritage grant it had received in 2021 as part of a community enrichment initiative. Adaeze read that sentence twice. Federal grant, community enrichment initiative. She poured another cup of tea. She opened her laptop. She had spent 9 years learning to identify what didn't add up and then follow it until it did. She started with the grant. The 2021 Federal Arts and Heritage Grant, administered through the Virginia Department of Cultural Resources, had been awarded to the Whitmore Club under a program that funded institutions demonstrating broad community access and inclusive cultural programming. The application, which Adaeze obtained through a public records request, listed the following commitments: a quarterly public lecture series on Virginia history, a youth art mentorship program serving at-risk students in Charlottesville's East Side schools, and an annual open house weekend during which the club's facilities would be available to the public at no charge. The grant was $2.3 million over 5 years. Adaeze spent 4 evenings checking. She searched the club's website for any record of the public lecture series. Nothing. She filed a records request with the city for any documentation of the youth mentorship program, permits, school partnership agreements, attendance records. The city clerk's office responded in 2 weeks. There were no records. She asked the Virginia Department of Cultural Resources for any compliance reports filed by the Whitmore Club since 2021. She was told that no compliance reports had been submitted. The money had been flowing for 3 years. The programs did not exist. She kept going. She filed a public records request for the club's federal grant application. It took 6 weeks and a letter from a UVA public policy clinic attorney to obtain. When it arrived, she spread it across her kitchen table and read every page. The application had been signed by the club's board president. The board president of the Whitmore Club from 2020 to the present was a man named Chester Hathaway, Rosalind's husband, Claire's father. The man who had given a toast at his daughter's rehearsal dinner about the importance of legacy. Adaeze wrote Chester Hathaway's name in the notebook. She had not spoken publicly about the evening at the door. She had not posted anything, had not contacted any journalist. She had simply been doing what she always did, building the case before she made any move at all. Then someone else moved first. A woman named Priscilla Thorne was 63 years old, retired, a former high school principal who had lived in Charlottesville for 31 years. In 2019, she had applied for membership to the Whitmore Club at the invitation of a departing member who had nominated her before his family relocated to Atlanta. Her application had been reviewed by the membership committee. She had been rejected under a provision the club called community and character alignment. She was not given a reason. There was no appeal. Priscilla had kept the rejection letter in a folder for 4 years. She had not known what to do with it. Then she saw a social media post Adaeze had written. Not about the Whitmore Club, but about a different subject entirely. A piece about veterans' housing policy. And something about the directness of Adaeze's voice made Priscilla reach out through a mutual acquaintance. They met at a coffee shop on Water Street. Priscilla brought the folder. Adaeze read the rejection letter. Standard form language. Community and character alignment. Same 4 words. No name, no contact for follow-up. Same signature block. She asked Priscilla if she knew anyone else who had received one. Priscilla knew 2 people. She made calls. Those 2 people knew 3 more. By the end of the following week, Adaeze had spoken with 7 individuals who had applied to the Whitmore Club and been rejected under the community and character alignment clause in the past 8 years. All 7 were people of color. She asked each of them to share their application materials and rejection letters. 6 of them still had the paperwork. All 6 rejection letters were identical except for the name. She built a spreadsheet. She cross-referenced names, application years, and outcomes with what she could establish about racial background from public records and direct confirmation. She contacted the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development, which maintains records related to fair housing and private club compliance for organizations receiving public or federal funds, and filed a data request. It took 3 months and 2 follow-up letters. When the data arrived, it confirmed what the 7 conversations had already suggested. Over a 12-year period, the Whitmore Club's membership committee had processed 41 applications from non-white applicants. 38 had been rejected, 93%. The rejection rate for white applicants during the same period was 9%. All 41 non-white applications had been reviewed by the membership committee during the tenure of its current chair, Rosalind Hathaway. Adaeze stared at the number for a long time. Then she wrote it in the notebook. She was not angry in the way that burns quickly and dies. She was angry in the way her old battalion commander had described combat patience, a slow, disciplined heat that knows how to wait. She called a woman named Dr. Marguerite Fontaine, 55 years old, civil rights attorney in Richmond, a veteran of 4 federal discrimination cases involving private institutions. They had never met. Adaeze had found her name in a case citation while researching precedent. Dr. Fontaine listened without interrupting for 22 minutes. Then she said one sentence: "You don't have a story about a door. You have a story about a grant." The civil complaint was filed in the Western District of Virginia 6 weeks later. The basis: a federally funded institution operating exclusionary membership practices inconsistent with the stated purpose of its federal grant, in potential violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. The complaint named the Whitmore Club. It named Chester Hathaway in his capacity as board president. It named Rosalind Hathaway in her capacity as membership committee chair. It did not name Carter Pell. The maitre d' was not the point. The morning the filing became public record, a reporter named Sam Elliott at the Charlottesville Courier pulled it from the court docket and read it at his desk. He was 29 years old and had been covering local government and institutions for 4 years. He recognized the Whitmore Club immediately. He recognized the grant number. He had written the original 2021 article about the award. He called Adaeze. She answered. She had been expecting this call, or one like it. Sam's article ran 4 days later. It was careful and precise, the kind of piece that leads with documents rather than outrage. He published the grant application language alongside the compliance gap. He published the membership data with sourcing attributed to the state data request. He published the 7 rejection letters, with the applicant's permission, laid side by side to show the identical language. He also made a call to the Virginia Department of Cultural Resources and asked whether the Whitmore Club had ever submitted a compliance report under the 2021 grant's community enrichment terms. The department spokesperson called back in 40 minutes. The answer was no. The article included that sentence in the 4th paragraph. The story moved faster than Adaeze had expected. By the 2nd day, a Richmond television station had picked it up. By the 3rd day, a national outlet ran a piece under a headline she had not written and would not have chosen, but which was not wrong. The Whitmore Club's statement, issued through a communications firm, was 80 words. It expressed commitment to inclusive community values, stated that membership decisions were made in accordance with private association guidelines, and said the club was reviewing its programming commitments. There was no mention of Priscilla Thorne. There was no mention of 38 rejection letters. There was no mention of the money. Rosalind Hathaway's personal attorney issued a separate statement saying that Mrs. Hathaway had always acted in accordance with the committee's established procedures, and that characterizations of her conduct as discriminatory were factually baseless. Adaeze read both statements. She noted that neither of them mentioned a single name that wasn't the club's own. She set down her phone and made dinner. She was in the kitchen when Bennett Ostroff called. It was 8:14 p.m. He had seen the article. He spoke carefully, the way people do when they are trying to honor 2 loyalties at once and finding the geometry difficult. He said he wanted her to know he was sorry about what had happened at the door. He said he had not known about the membership data. He said his father had not known either. Adaeze thanked him. She meant it. He paused. Then he said, "Claire's parents are not taking this well." She said she understood. She did not say more than that. After she hung up, she stood at the kitchen window for a while. The street below was quiet. She thought about Priscilla Thorne, 63 years old, keeping a rejection letter in a folder for 4 years because she didn't know what else to do with it. She thought about the 6 others, the cardiac nurse, the high school football coach, the owner of 3 small businesses on the east side, the retired postal worker who had lived in Charlottesville for 40 years and been told, gently and identically, that the committee had found her lacking in community alignment. She thought about her mother, Chinyere, who had worked 22 years in a hospital and been addressed by her first name by colleagues who went by doctor until they retired. She went back to the kitchen table. She opened the notebook. She did not write anything new. She just looked at the names. The federal investigation opened 11 days after the article ran. The Virginia office of the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division sent a formal inquiry to the club and to the Department of Cultural Resources regarding compliance with Title VI and the terms of the grant. The same week, 2 corporate sponsors of the Whitmore Club's annual gala, a regional bank and a real estate development firm, quietly withdrew their participation. Combined sponsorship value, $190,000. Neither issued a public statement. Both sent letters citing reputational alignment review. A week after that, Harold Ostroff's firm, Ostroff Logistics Solutions, announced it was not renewing a service vendor relationship with a company that leased office space from a Hathaway-affiliated property group. The vendor relationship had been under routine review for 60 days. Harold did not make a public statement. He did not need to. Chester Hathaway resigned from the Whitmore Club board on a Tuesday morning. His letter, 3 sentences, cited a desire to allow the institution space for reflection during a review process. Rosalind Hathaway did not resign from the membership committee. She was removed by a board vote of 4-2 12 days later. Adaeze was teaching a Tuesday evening seminar at UVA, a public policy course on institutional accountability, when her phone lit up with the notification. She finished the class. She answered her students' questions. She packed her bag. She walked to her car in the November dark and sat for a moment with her hands on the wheel. There was a voicemail from Dr. Fontaine. The DOJ inquiry had been upgraded to a formal compliance investigation. The $2.3 million grant was under review for potential clawback. There was a text from Priscilla Thorne. It said 3 words, "You did it." Adaeze wrote back, "We did it." She drove home. She made tea. She sat at the kitchen table with the notebook open in front of her. She thought about the 11 seconds she had stood in the Whitmore Club doorway, while Carter Pell looked past her for the person the invitation actually belonged to. She thought about her mother, working a night shift the Christmas she was 7, and Adaeze eating cereal alone in the kitchen at 6 in the morning because her grandmother had forgotten to buy milk, and they made do with water and it tasted wrong. But she ate it anyway because she had been taught not to waste food. She thought about sitting in a military transport at 22 years old, flying into darkness, understanding for the first time that her country would send her to places it didn't want to explain to hold lines it wasn't ready to acknowledge. And she had gone anyway, because service is what you give even when the institution is imperfect, and the institution being imperfect is not a reason to stop. She thought about the notebook. She flipped back to the first page. She had started it in 2015, a week after she arrived at Fort Benning for Ranger School. Her first squad leader had told her to write down every name she learned, not for any tactical reason, just because names mattered, because the people attached to them mattered, because if something happened to someone in your charge and you couldn't say their name, you had already failed them before the moment arrived. She had kept that habit for 9 years in the Army. She kept it still. She turned to the page where she had written Carter Pell's name. She looked at it for a moment. Then she closed the notebook. Carter Pell was not the story. He had never been the story. He was a man who had sorted people quickly, the way he had been trained to sort them, by a system that rewarded that particular kind of efficiency and called it discretion. The story was the system. The system was still there. 2 months after the investigation opened, the Whitmore Club entered into a consent agreement with the Virginia Department of Cultural Resources. The terms: an independent audit of membership records going back 15 years, revision of all membership review procedures, mandatory public reporting on programming outcomes, and a formal community access program serving East Side Charlottesville residents to be established within 6 months. The $2.3 million grant remained frozen, pending full compliance verification. An article in the Charlottesville Courier ran the day after the consent agreement was signed. Sam Elliott wrote the piece. He included a brief quote from Adaeze, one sentence, at her request. She had written it herself and read it to him over the phone. This was never about the door. The door was just where it became visible. The article also included a response from Priscilla Thorne. Sam had reached out to all 7 of the original applicants whose rejection letters had been used in the filing. Priscilla was the only one who wanted to be named. Her quote was 4 sentences. The last one was this: "I applied to that club because a friend believed I belonged there. I'm glad someone else believed it too." On a Saturday in early December, the Interfaith Community Coalition that had organized around the case held a public lunch at the Carver Recreation Center on Preston Avenue, 3 miles from the Whitmore Club. Long tables, donated food, paper plates. 3 of the 7 original applicants attended. A retired school teacher, a nurse who had driven in from Waynesboro, a man who had owned a barber shop on Ridge Street for 26 years and closed it 2 years back when the rents went up, and who sat at the end of a table and ate his food and said very little, and seemed, for the first time in a while, like someone who had been heard. Adaeze was there. She wore jeans and a sweater. No dress blues, no ceremony. She sat at a table with Priscilla and 2 of the others, and ate a plate of food someone had brought from home, and the food was good the way food is good when people made it for each other. Halfway through lunch, a little girl at the next table looked at Adaeze and asked what she did. Adaeze said she used to be a soldier. The girl considered this. "Did you have a gun?" "Sometimes." "Were you scared?" Adaeze thought about it. "Sometimes. But being scared and doing the thing anyway, that's actually the whole point." The girl nodded solemnly and went back to her food. Adaeze watched the room, the noise of it, silverware, conversation. A baby somewhere near the door, someone laughing at a table by the window, the ordinary warmth of people who have decided to show up. She thought about doors, about who gets to stand in one without being counted, about all the rooms that have ever held a version of this question and all the people who had walked away from those rooms, carrying the answer they should not have had to carry alone. Then she picked up her fork and finished her food. And outside the windows of the Carver Recreation Center, Charlottesville went about its Saturday, and the morning light was thin and clean and fell on everything without asking permission.